Right.
But it's a beautiful story of how, and I didn't really pay attention, or understand that, is how Isaac, and I knew Isaac lived the entire time in the land,
In
in the land. And the servant went to the nations to get the bride, and the bride was willing to go.
She had to come to him.
And she had to come up, she had to give up all, because it kind of sounds like a familiar story, doesn't it? I like that. What else?
Really, the dedication is your, of the whole group to God.
Well, that is amazing.
And the name Eliezer means comforter.
Oh, it does?
Is
Oh.
in Hebrew.
So we have a comforter.
Definitely.
Isn't that something?
That is something. Oh, I
There's a
didn't-
bridegroom.
I'm just amazed how smart God is. I can't figure it
That'd be
out.
amazing how smart God is.
Yeah. He's so smart, I can't figure it out.
Wonder why we are so done, Brad.
No, it's just inadequate. I don't do math.
Well, and I think that's why he's restoring his language. Because there's so much we miss by not knowing Hebrew. We'll never see it.
No, we don't see it, and we saw that today.
With Ephraim.
With Ephraim, yeah.
That is what.
You know, I think it's equally important, it's so important he's restoring his language to us so we can communicate with him. But also remembering the Pharisees spoke Hebrew as their first language. So he's not only doing that, but he's renewing our hearts to be able to see him in the right light, you know.
This is spirit and truth coming together.
And the thing about it is, from my perspective, I come at it from a Western viewpoint because it's where I was raised in the nation. I don't understand the language.
We go A to Z.
And somebody
Hebrew
who
goes
understands the
out.
language can glean so much more, or a different perspective than we can.
Well,
Go ahead.
it's always interested me that Isaac's gone as soon as Abraham takes him to the Mount Moriah,
Yeah.
and he does not appear until the bride is
To
ready.
the bride, yeah.
And so when it reads in 24:62, and Isaac came from the way of the well, Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the southern country. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the eventide, and he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. So I mean, he'd been gone this whole time. He's not mentioned. He's not the focus of anything except for what the Father had intended. Does that make sense? So his active role wasn't even in place. His active role was to be gone at this point until the bride came to fruition, until she came to him,
And he is,
which was the Father's plan.
and you think about that too, Yeshua says, not even he knows the day or the hour, or the time. Did Isaac know the time that his bride was coming? That's kind of interesting, just hit me. He didn't, did he? And what a minute is he walking in the field and he looks up and where is he? And where is the sun every year prior to he's walking in the field? So every year he was walking in the field and he looks up and he sees his bride.
Holy moly, that's
And
interesting.
then what are we supposed to do? Do we look up and we see him coming?
We're supposed to be watching
Fall
for
right
it.
off like
It says we look up and we see him coming, the whole world will see him coming, won't they? That's kind of cool.
But we're supposed to also be bearing fruit too, eventually.
Bearing fruit. Which, did y'all listen to all of last week's teaching, even the Sunday portions part? One thing I gleaned from this, and from a Western aspect taught in church, was something I really gleaned. And if I get the opportunity to teach it at this little church I go to, which he said I should be speaking pretty soon, again, was this. The third commandment, what is it?
You shall not take the Lord's name in vain.
Okay, we read it with the definition.
Mhm.
What's that mean to us?
Don't say GD,
That's right.
Don't do what?
don't say GD.
But he told a story as a rabbi would, or a rabbi told the story as, don't think of it as a definition, think of it in action. I thought that was cool. Which that's deep. Okay, so that means I'm an ambassador for the Father.
We are ambassadors.
So when I am not, and when I am who I'm, if I take his name on me, and I'm an ambassador, boy, this really hit me between the eyes. All those times that I wasn't a very good ambassador, I was breaking commandment number 3. So have I taken the name of God in vain and without knowing it? That's pretty strong. Yes, Jim.
And yet, you're also breaking the first one, because it says, love the Lord your God with all your soul. And we already know that love is defined, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So,
And if I'm not being a good ambassador, so who am I worshiping?
you're not loving him.
It's so deep, isn't it? It's so intertwined, and there's so much to learn.
Intertwined is a great.
Here comes that scarlet thread.
But
Yeah.
you know what's so amazing to me? He says it's not by your works, your merits, your work doings. It's because of my namesake. And which is, the thing I saw in today's portion was, and we saw last week, Abraham was what? Very generous, right?
Oh, he gave the kingdom to Isaac.
No, I mean, but when the angels came, what kind of, he was a
He
hospitable
ran,
man.
he ran to them.
He ran to them. He was like,
And that was on the 3rd day after circumcision.
right.
He was hurt.
It was a tough day. How did Rebecca do the same thing?
She fell off her camel.
What does the father say in the end? He goes, he has something about feeding my sheep. The widows and the orphans, they're all hospitable people. They're not perfect. Was Rebecca probably had a little pagan past?
Oh, yeah, she did.
We know Laban.
Laban was, yeah. Yeah. Had a little, got upset when his gods were taken.
Mm-hmm.
So the main thing is the hospitable attitude. So to be an ambassador of the Father would be, when people see us, are we grumbling? Are we lifting burdens? Or are we causing burdens?
Amen.
Are we lifting burdens or are we causing burdens? It's that simple. So
I need to talk to you and Jay later.
think about every day,
There's something going on. I
when
need
you
to-
wake up, when people see me coming, do they turn away because they're like, oh, here he comes again, I gotta do something for him?
Or do they see
Or
you
they go,
coming?
man, I am so glad to see you because every time I see you, you lift my day.
With my spirit.
You lift my spirit. I don't know, like, the Father's been dealing with me on that. So if somebody comes up to me and I see them go, oh, they're hiding from me, then that means I have been a burden to them in some way. They're hiding from me. But if they see me coming and they smile and I'm like, man, we're glad you're here today. Isn't that kind of how basic that is?
I think also Rebecca was young, and God chose her like that, because she still had a heart of a child. You know, she wasn't infected too much with the little idols that her
But-
family had.
But wasn't that the same thing that that other rabbi taught on about Sarah? She was still young at heart in an old age. And I know people like that.
And you know, like kids, oh yeah, I want to go. She was young, Rebecca was young.
But I have been in contact with people in my life that they were a joy to be around. Life was always awesome to them. And they were up in age. And when you saw, everybody wanted to see them or remember them. They were just neat people. It's just like Sarah. Joy. So that's kind of cool. Anybody else have anything to go?
soon, so I'm trying to figure out how to make sure my kids don't hate me, you know, as I raise them. Because I notice that most people hate their parents, and it's a horrible thing in our culture, and that's just, you know, my whole generation grew up and they hated their parents, and later they either be like, oh, well, you know, we shouldn't have hated their parents like I did. Some people, they just, but there's so much bitterness that gets built up, and so I've been trying to figure out, okay, even if I, you know, if I teach my kids the right way and you know, do this and this and this, there's still all these variables. You know, how am I gonna keep my children from wanting things of the world? How am I gonna keep them from, you know, and obviously I've never been a father before, so I don't know, but I've got a game plan that just came to me like while we were sitting here. If I could just, if I can make sure my children see that I have genuine joy all the time, and I actually have genuine joy, and everything that I teach them, they're gonna say, okay, my dad has genuine joy. And as I see the rest of the world, they might have fun, but they don't have genuine joy. So if I could keep them to see that, I think that might work. It might not work, I don't know. But, you know.
But you know my experience,
Hmm.
all 4 of my children told me they hated me.
You did your job right.
And I said, good, that means I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because you're not supposed to like me at this time in your life. But you will be my best friend later on. Do as I say, do as I do. There's times where I was happy, there was times when I was sad, there was times when I didn't enjoy what I was doing, but I did it. I was steady. You gotta be steady,
Consistent.
consistent.
Yeah.
Man,
And when you're steady and consistent, they will see that. But they won't always understand it. And at that time, when they see the world enticing them, and you're sitting there thinking they're holding them back, you've also got to sit down and explain to them, I'm holding you back for a purpose. You don't understand it now. There's things that God is doing with me. I don't understand them now. But you've got to trust. And I've had my children, all of them, I hate you. And I'm like, that's good. Stay in your room for 6 more weeks, I don't care. But my children all love me today.
Is that why they have a little slot underneath the door where you pass in the food?
It didn't matter. But all of them are now raising their children to be obedient, honor them, and so forth. And they'll go through the same cycle that I went through with them. As grandparents, so I can sit back and go, I'm paying for your raising. Because I paid for mine, right? We are not, the biggest thing I see with parents these days is they want to be their children's friend.
Our society pushes that.
And all us old timers, we were not friends with our parents.
No.
So much of that comes though because they're so close in age a lot of times that they're still at that point where they need friends.
Right,
They don't understand the difference.
right. The other issue in life today is my child mentality is, as a parent, my child is perfect, so you must be the problem, not my child. My mentality was, you're the problem, and if I hear from these that you're the problem, you really have to pay for it. That's back in the old days, right? Or
We
you
raised
in
like
agreement
that.
in agreement with me there, Jay?
We raised like that, you shouldn't be doing that.
That's right. And trust me, I got in trouble at school and I'd have the option. Do you want me to call your mom?
No.
Way.
Let's fix it right now.
Fix it now. I'll tell mom 20 years from now, and then she still gets mad at me. You did that? And I said, wow. I'm like, Mom, it was 20 years ago. I learned my lesson. Oh, okay.
But you still did.
One of the things that I've come to see, and this is very important, and I think all of us can actually relate to this, is as we grew up and our love for our parents, and you can think about this from when you were you know, we can't remember being firstborn, and they held us, and they took care of us, and they fed us, and they cleaned us, and all that. In every stage, and I've got a lesson that I'll probably do, this will be one of your thoughts of the day, but it is a stage where at some point in time, you hated God.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been through it. As we are teenagers, we don't like our parents. But then we learn to respect that because God is solid, God is stable, God is there. He never leaves us, we leave Him. Our whole life of learning to grow up with our parents and our life with our Father is very, very similar. It has similar stages to that, is what I want to see. Because most of us go through that time to where it's just, God, give me this. I won't. And He set out real simple. There's 10 commandments. First ones are how to love me. And the others are, don't do this, don't do that. Didn't give you a reason why. He just said, don't. Just like we tell our little children, no. Plain, simple. You don't understand that. You know, what part of no did you not understand? Plain and simple. Now, as we grow and we mature, we understand why. But there, for a while, it's like, can't tell me what to do. It's all part of maturing. It's all part of age. But our life with our parents in those stages is the same way it is with our Heavenly Father. So,
And back to when my kids said they did, when I was consistent, I invested in them, and they saw it. I was not standoff. They didn't hate me because of the fact that I was mean to them or mistreated them or wasn't fair. They disliked me because I didn't let them do what they wanted to do. But they knew I'd go to the ends of the earth to protect them. Just like our Heavenly Father. We come to that point where I messed up, but I know if I go back to the Father, He'll welcome me back in. They always knew that if they had a car wreck, I was more concerned about them than I was that car. They never doubted that. They just didn't like me because I wasn't letting them have the fun that all the other kids were having. Because I knew the best interest for them, and I told them that. I said, that will hurt you later on. No, it won't, Dad. Yes, it will. Can't do that. And number two, if you mess up, I don't have to live with it, you do. Do you want to live with that the rest of your life? Oh, but no. Seriously, this is what's going to happen if you do this. So stand your ground. It's amazing how being a parent is just like God with us. It's the exact same way. And the other part about it is, no matter how bad we mess up, a good, strong, loving parent will do what?
Teaching them.
Come on back, if you're repentant. Now, if you come back and you want to still live like the way you want to live in your rules, you can't live in my house.
Go back and eat the slime.
That's right. That's right.
Perfect. That's a beautiful picture of the prodigal son.
Well, you know, God just didn't deal with me. And I call on kids, and I see kids all the time, and I see two kinds of kids. I see those with hope, and I see those who, like a swine, would eat you in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's because they were raised in an unloving environment whose God is the world. They're out there. We got to pray for them. Hopefully we win them. It's getting more and more and more and more. There's no life in their eyes.
I work with them.
I see thousands of them. So it's sad. Okay, what else can we talk about? Let's talk about something happy. Happy. Sure, go ahead. This is discussion time.
This is happy stuff.
This is good
This
stuff.
is Hebrews 11. Uh, 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. So Isaac was a type of Christ.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And when he offered Isaac, it wasn't that God didn't know Abraham's heart. He did know it. Abraham did not know Abraham's heart. And he needed to pound his heart on the anvil of reality, and that's what he did.
You know, isn't that true in all our lives?
God knows our heart.
And even thinking back, going back to my sports ideas, the coach knew that I could do more than I could do. God knows that we sell ourselves short, don't we? Well,
Do you think it could be why he tests us? Not to see what decision we'll make, because he already knows our heart, but so that we'll see what decision
exactly what it
we'll
is.
make.
That's exactly what it is.
probably
He knows
so.
what we're
In
gonna
that
do.
same,
We
I mean,
don't
in
know.
that same, what you're just saying, that's why he tests us, so that we can prove to ourselves whether our heart's here or our heart's here. You know?
Yeah, hope so. Because you don't really know until you experience.
Yeah, because there's lots of things I think about. I go, well, no, if that happens, I'm gonna do this, but I know better, knowing, well, maybe you ought to wait till that happens and see what you really do.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier,
Uh-huh.
with, would we really give up our life if it come right down to it? We sit here all day long and say, you bet, you bet. But when we're confronted with the actual
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah, will you take the mark or not?
exactly,
You don't appreciate it.
You- that's easy to
until
say,
you've gone through
but
it.
when you're confronted with it,
Even David.
okay, look back at the Maccabees, when, the mothers that would not conform to the pagan ways, when they circumcised their children, when they taught them the Torah, these people would actually take the babies and kill them and hang them around their mothers' necks
Yeah,
Yes.
until they rotted,
yep,
and then kill the mother.
right.
You know,
We've
are
been-
we that strong?
we have been very sheltered.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about all the people in this country that have went and risked their lives, and a lot of them have given our lives for fighting for our freedom. And we can appreciate that and be really grateful for that, and rightfully so. And, we think about taking that as a parallel to, in this last 100 years, more people have died for Christ than in the last 1900 years since Christ was beforehand. So right now, we really are sons of the kingdom of God, above all else, I hope, anyhow. And we've got brothers and sisters that are dying out there right at this very moment. And so, how do we end up giving our lives for those people? I mean, it'll be easy to see things come to fruition if I have to go fight for my country and I have to die for the people who live around me, and I have to engage in a war, and we can say, yeah, we'll go, or maybe you won't go. But how do we apply our lives to defending those people who are losing their lives now?
Well, let's think about the word, and let's think about our soldiers that have fought for us. You've got to come to a realization that your life is worth less than the whole.
Right.
In other words, there was thousands of people who knew to die for this word so that you could read it
2013, so that we can.
was more important. Can you imagine that? I'm going to die because I know that there are going to be people who need to read this. They could have simply said, tough with that.
And there is countries
And
that
give
don't
it
have
in.
it.
And
But
they
could
don't
have
have
said,
it.
they could have said,
don't
well, God thinks I'm more important than some book. They could have done it a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We are more important than some book, but we don't know that until we read that book and understand.
And all this
Love.
is Mashiach, Yeshua himself, this word. This is the whole embodiment of it.
all about a bride and a
But we just
bridegroom.
don't, we just take it for granted.
Right?
We take it for granted that on D-Day, that those men got out of that boat and ran up that beach.
When we represented Jesus Christ, God Almighty, we didn't present Buddha or Muhammad. We knew, they knew who we are, they know who we are, we're Christian nation. They know, that's what they want, period. Kill them.
But, you know, just like all nations, our nation has just like Israel, they've gotten fat and happy
Amazing.
and fat and lazy.
Well, we haven't taught our kids the word of God, period. We've gotten away from it.
We've
I
gotten-
meet a lot of
Every
people,
generation just seems to do the same thing.
they don't teach them nothing. I tell them, I don't care what Christian church you go to, just go somewhere, teach your kids about God, that's your responsibility as a parent.
And the amazing thing is that God knows that He has to take you to the desert, He has to let you be a little hungry. And when you get a little hungry, then it's amazing how that wakes you up.
God bless America, why are we not blessed? Why?
Well, because we took care of Israel one time,
Yeah, we cared
A
for
little bit?
but America's not His country anyway. There's only one country or one nation that He's called His. And where does the bride come from?
the nations,
The nations.
the nations.
So, in His due time, we'll see how He plans it out, and we'll go back. Do we want to go back?
So in the meantime, though, how do we help those people? How do we actually put?
We keep
feet to
walking,
You live it.
shining light.
Just look, me, okay, me living, I know that there are people that are getting their heads chopped off in other countries right now, in Syria, okay? Because they're laying their lives down for this. If I live this out, that'll help the people around me, but how can I reach out to that person? I mean, like, I decide, you know what, I didn't want to cook today, I'm gonna go to the store and eat a cheeseburger. I know there are people starving to death. Like, this is just me, because this convicts me a little bit, you know? We talk about these things, like we gotta get out of our Western Gentile mindset, we've gotta stop doing our Greek theology, all these Christian theologies we have to put away with, and that's true, that those things are good, but I'm getting here ready to raise a child, and I'm looking at my culture, and there's more paganism infested in my own culture, more hedonism in the luxury of this thing that mirrors, you know, you might be the actual thing, but it mirrors Mystery Babylon, looks just like all the things in Revelation, and I say, how do I stand against this? Not just as an individual, but how do we do this as a community?
Here we are.
And how do we really do that? How do we put feet on it?
Here we are.
By doing what we're doing right now.
We're trying, some of us.
We're gonna do one of those.
Every person, if you go to get that cheeseburger,